would like to welcome you to this panel, De-Carbonizing the Set, which is brought to you by MBS, our wonderful sponsor. And we would like to welcome to the stage Geoff Teoli, who is with the City of Vancouver Film Office. And along with Geoff, we have Ryan Schaetzle, Gemma Martini, Jo Beirnes, Eric Cerretani, Lisa Scope, and Colin McDougall, I believe, joining us from the wonderful place down under in Australia. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Before we get into introductions, I just wanted to say that my connection to the land and to environmentalism, I think, kind of started when I was younger. I grew up in the unceded territories of the Katzie and Kwantlen nations. I used to ride my bike out to the rivers, see tadpoles, go fishing, hiking in the mountains and all the lakes and the streams and the river in that area. It's currently called Maple Ridge, and I think that's really when I started to get a connection to the earth and to the land, and really kind of fell in love with being here in BC. And being able to sit here with everybody today and talk a little bit about how we can protect that environment and all of our environments around the world as filmmakers is really quite a great honor. Before I get into it, a little plug. In between breaks, if you have some time in between breaks, drop in over where we had lunch today and check out what we're doing at the City of Vancouver in relation to our clean energy policy framework. We've got some of our amazing staff from the City Film Office up there. Yeah, they are. Great people who are not only help everybody get their film permits here, but are helping us to move City into being considered one of the leading cities in the world when it comes to decarbonization. So check out what we're doing on your break. But I won't spend any more time on that. I want to get into introductions here really quickly, and I'm just going to kind of read out a little bit of the credits and the background of the people that we have here on stage. So let me actually start with Ryan Schaetzle. Ryan is joining us from Atlanta, and he has been in the industry for 25 years, starting as a production assistant. He made the leap over to locations after talking with a scout in the office while taping up photo files. You dated yourself when you're taping photo files, yeah. He is mostly working in the southeast area of Atlanta, and his credits include The Blind Side, Dawson's Creek, What to Expect When You're Expecting, Halt and Catch Fire, Loki, and sounds like most recently, She-Hulk. Awesome, cool. Thank you. Oh, there's more, but maybe I'll just leave that for everyone to search on the IMDb list, because it's quite an amazing list. Member of Teamsters Local 728, LMGI member since 2016, and he's interested in helping to increase the profile and reach of LMGI and the recognition of locations' profession and their value in the process. Welcome. Sitting next to me, Gemma Martini. Gemma is the founder and CEO of Martini Film Studios in Langley. And she's passionate about working with people and bringing together to initiate change and working on various projects with professionals in the industry, and working with industry leaders to expand things like the workforce. And in addition to building many, many studios and a backlot, she has also recently been elected as the chair of the Motion Picture Industry Association in British Columbia, which is quite an accomplishment. It's such an important association for us here. And is looking forward to collaborating with the members and to expand and grow the industry in British Columbia. Welcome, Gemma. And next to Gemma, many of you will know Jo Beirnes. She is a DGC member BC for 25 years. Credits include Resident Alien, Keep Breathing, The Magicians, Man in the High Castle, Proud Small Business Owner. This is not a credit though, but of another thing you do. We have a lot of classic underachievers here. Owner of 2 different bakeries and cafes. She has become a director of studio operations now, most recently, and is currently in the role at MBS Canada, one of our sponsors here today, since 2021. So just a little over a year in the role. Yeah, thank you. And not quite done, also a member of MPIA on the board of directors and the EDI committee member, and a member of the Clean Energy Committee. Is there anything you don't do? No? Great. Welcome. At the end of the stage here, we have Eric Cerretani. He has a background in business and environmental science. He's been doing work in sustainability for Disney Television Productions for the last 7 years. He started at ABC Studios and now is with Disney General Entertainment. Eric has led initiatives around low carbon fuels, waste reduction, the reuse and sustainability of sourcing. Eric is also an active member of the Sustainable Production Alliance, which we'll hear more about today, and a group which is, sorry, actually I'm not even going to say this next part because it tells what it is, and I'll leave that to you. All right, and then joining us from Australia at 6:30 in the morning, I think it is. Thank you for getting up so early. We have Colin McDougall. He's a location manager, originally trained in such an interesting background in horticulture and landscape design, which he worked for in that field for 12 years. And then he went back to school and studied land resource management. And how you ended up in locations? Well, after a holiday traveling the world with his wife in the 90s, Colin started the Location Scout in 1999 and then became a location manager 1 year later in the year 2000. He's worked on a wide range of projects, film, television, and commercials. The projects, Christopher Nolan's film The Tenant, which of course we all know won for Outstanding Locations in Contemporary Film at the 2021 LMGI Awards, and is currently the supervising location manager on The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which I didn't even know was being made until I talked to Colin, which I'm really excited about. And that's currently shooting in Australia. And last but not least, Lisa Scope, who's also joining us from Sydney, is a location manager with 25 years of experience. A skilled, dedicated professional who has been scouting and managing some of Australia's most loved and respected dramas, including the award-winning Love Child, Packed to the Rafters, Love My Way, Rescue Special Ops. And she is really engaged in stakeholder engagement, negotiating skills, of course, as a big part of location managers, and a range of international productions, including Thor, Love and Thunder for Marvel, Peter Rabbit 2 for Sony Pictures, I Am Woman for Goalpost Pictures, and The Daughter, produced by Jan Chapman and Nicole O'Donoghue. With that, welcome everybody. Let's start with the origin, and I'm going to ask you just to tell me a little bit about, for you, what was kind of that moment or evolution that made you realize that sustainability is going to be a key part in what you do in your role, whether that's at Disney or producing film studios or being a location manager. And actually, I'll start just to my left for this round, to Gemma.
Thank you. Hello? Oh, it's on. I would say you use the word properly. It's always an evolution, isn't it? We're all on this journey together, and we've got goals, and we're trying to achieve them. For me, the big move forward was when we started to design our new studio campus, and we hired, as one of our main consulting team, was an energy consultant. And so the energy consultant was providing us with opportunities for our design and construction in our new site that would make us very sustainable in the future. And in doing that, I realized that a lot of the priorities that he was setting were things that I could do on our current 3 studios. So then I engaged him to do an energy survey of our current studios, and he said, well, if you want to get to net zero carbon, this is how you do it. Here's your checklist. And so we then went on the journey of achieving the checklist, and we've now, proud to say one of our studios is net zero, and the other 2 will be within a year from now.
That's amazing. Congratulations. Great. Mary Jo, what about you? What was the inspiration?
Strangely, my inspiration was when I left the film industry for a few years and opened a couple of bakery cafes. And in that role, I was the boss. I was the top of the little pyramid, and that's where I realized that I had a tremendous amount of responsibility from a sustainability standpoint. And I saw all of the endless waste being produced by single-use packaging, and some of the mistakes I made in the initial design of my restaurant, in where to put the freezers, and I came to realize how inefficient so many small businesses are, and did a lot of work to remedy that, some expensive mistakes that were made along the way, and then when I came back to the film industry, I realized how much of that knowledge that I gained was very much applicable here, and I've been trying to do that ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. A lot of people leave the industry and come back, but we bring back a lot of new wisdom when we do come back, and that's a great story. Yeah, thanks. Ryan?
Yeah, I don't know if mine happened all at once as much as it was over the years. Sometimes location managers sometimes find themselves being glorified trash people. at the end, because at the end of the day, we are the people who deal with what's left behind. So I think it's dawned on me over the years that it's too much, and then when you couple that with all of our trucks and all of the things, it sort of slowly dawned on me that we need to make a change. And then, oddly enough, if there was a moment that gave me hope that we can actually do it, was the impact that COVID had on the business was just a huge slap in the face. But I saw what happens when the business wants to keep moving and move in the right way and do the right things for the right reasons, with enough, where there's a will, there's a way, right? So I hope it doesn't take something as bad as a pandemic to get the industry to mobilize to do the right thing. But I think we've seen in a very short time that it can be done. So that gives me a little bit of hope.
Great, thank you. And Eric?
Yeah, Geoff, similar to what you were saying, I grew up in a really rural area and spent a lot of time, a little ironically, without TV growing up. So I spent a lot of time kind of outside and kind of had a connection with nature, knew I wanted to do something within sustainability. And I was always interested in kind of the mix of business and sustainability because there's a huge impact there. So when I started at Disney, it was really great to see that they have some pretty aggressive goals around, carbon emissions, waste, things like this. And so there's a lot of progress being made, but a lot of opportunities too. So it's been
Great.
fun.
So that's awesome. So excited to hear more about what you're doing. And let's jump down to the other side of the globe. Colin.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity. Great to speak to everyone across the Pacific. First of all, I must apologise for the light going on here. The sun's come up since we started this, so it's very early here in Australia. I guess when it really hit me the first time was when a production company had a dedicated environment team on a production, and I realised, look, productions are really taking this seriously. But probably even more so was watching how the crew reacted to that and how enthusiastically they embraced recycling and all the different initiatives were brought in by that environment team. I really realized, okay, we're on the path now. This is wonderful.
Great, thank you. And Lisa. Oh, hang on, Lisa. We're just going to get your sound up here. I think you're on mute.
Apologies.
There you go.
Hi, I'll start again. Thank you so much for having us. It's a real privilege to be a part of this conversation, and it's really, really exciting. I think for me personally, I noticed, like Colin, that we started to have dedicated environmental people doing recycling and what have you. And then I really noticed the impact of COVID and how far we went backwards, and realized the reflection on what we actually had been doing was such good progress. But now we've really taken a step back. And Australia is quite a long way behind a lot of what you guys are doing in terms of progress, which we look forward to being able to inspire everyone.
Great, thank you. And you know what, I think one of the great things about this event is that, many of us are at different stages of the journey. Vancouver is the birthplace of Greenpeace, so it's no surprise that it's the birthplace of sustainable production. But around the world, and whether you're in Australia or Atlanta or the UK, I think everyone's talking about this subject, and we're all on the same journey together, which is just amazing. So the next, actually, I'm going to change things up a bit because we had a conversation, of course, before we had the meeting here. I'm going to kind of combine the next two questions for you guys, and then we're going to dig into decarbonizing specifically pretty quickly. The issue of decarbonizing as a specific subset of sustainability really started to climb to the top of the priority list in recent years. I'm sure many of you have probably seen all the charts that show, the carbon footprint of a production is so much of it. I think it's over 50% is related to fuel and transportation and energy, which is, I think, the greatest area of potential positive impact we can have if we address, carbon. So I wanted to ask, and I'm actually going to start a little bit on the industry side with Gemma, Eric, and Mary Jo, in that order. What do you see as the biggest opportunities to decarbonize the set today? And pick any area that's in your wheelhouse.
Thank you. So we are on the studio side, the studio facilities side, but really we're in the service industry. So anything we can do to service production to help them reach their goals. So in terms of decarbonizing at our studios, we use RNG as our main fuel source for our heating, which RNG is renewable natural gas and it's carbon neutral. We have solar panels in order to make up the 7% of dirty power of hydro. And then we also have a lot of EV charging stations, so we provide opportunity for production. So we don't allow them to bring diesel generators on the site, but we say, you know what, we have lots of power for you, don't worry about it, and then you can also plug in your cars. So that's how we provide production with the opportunity to decarbonize.
And Eric.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I mean, it's a really tough thing. And like you said, a lot of the emissions are coming from fuel used in trucks and generators, and then your electricity, right, from at the studios or other places. So great, if you can, the facilities are a huge piece in that, right? Working with facilities to figure out how do we get clean power, whether it's from renewable sources or, renewable gas or the grid. For me, I think a huge piece is when you are on location, there's a lot of times where, you're not going to be able to avoid using this equipment, right? Using like diesel trucks, generators. So a push for us, which is kind of a temporary solution, is a lot of low carbon fuels like renewable diesel and things like that, and also the electrification of vehicles and generators.
Mm-hmm.
So, would love for things to go electric tomorrow, but it's not going to happen. There's a lot of equipment out there that's going to continue to be used, and there are good alternatives out there. So kind of figuring out how we can work with folks to make those fuels and other things available is huge.
Right, great, cool. And Mary Jo, speaking of generators and equipment, right over to you.
Sure. So, touching on what you've mentioned with the renewable fuels, at two of our studios, we're in the process. One is in, and one is about to happen. We have renewable diesel tanks available, so that the productions that are in them can access that renewable diesel rather than the standard carbon version. I think the biggest thing for me that the biggest victory has been the filming on location and utilizing, seeing the shift in public policy in what the City of Vancouver has done, and others are following suit with incentivizing the use of battery generators and the use of grid tie-ins, so that folks are getting a discount on their film permits, and that is really, really incentivizing the move over to those lower carbon alternatives.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm actually going to switch over to the location managers now in the room, the working ones, that is. Mary Jo, no slight. Because I think you touched on something there too, which is we're covering a very large geographic area here with this room and our audience. And on the panel, and I want to talk about some of the connections to what's happening in different parts of the world in relation to government organizations, about location, and any type of support that you're seeing from your local governments, film commissions, or just the community at large, including vendors on sustainability initiatives. What you're seeing now, and what you'd like to see, maybe even in the sense, I know we heard from Australia that you feel like you're behind. So what do you need? I'm going to switch this up a bit, and we're going to go down to the other side of the Pacific and start with Lisa.
Sure. We recently have a production that is for the very first time experimenting with the battery generators, which is exciting news. I personally have worked on a long form production which we put 3-phase power into the house, so we didn't have to have generators on the street. Our city of Sydney is very green, and they do a lot of focus on decarbonising. So I'm looking forward to starting a conversation with them post this panel to encourage them to, step up to the rest of the world and take their focus not just from everything else that they do that's green, but also to support the film industry, because they are very proactive in the arts. So it's really exciting. Yeah.
That's great. Tell them to call us. Yeah, we'll talk. Colin, what are you seeing?
Well, look, unfortunately, there isn't a great deal of government incentive driving us to that low emissions approach. But I really think productions are starting to focus on it. And one of the ways we can practically do that, especially as location managers, being involved right in that first, process of selecting locations, is really try and keep them as close as possible to production bases and minimize that travel. We were on the current project I'm on, we're looking at beautiful wild locations, beautiful forests, mountains and streams. And we had, I guess the producers gave us the latitude, with incentives to travel within the state. That can mean up to 13 hours travel by car. We were able to get all of our main unit locations within 2 hours of Sydney. So, I guess as location manager, we quite often sit on a set and look at all those trucks and all of that infrastructure that's traveled to that set. And we realize, wow, we're a big part of, that energy used to get all of that there. So just simply by factoring in that in the decision process of what we do present as a location option, thinking about travel is a big thing. And of course, it was great to see our director really excited still about those close locations. So it was a good win.
Awesome, great, thanks. And Ryan, what's going on in
yeah,
Atlanta?
I'd like to echo what my Australian friend said with, I don't have a cool accent like that, but kind of the same idea is, I would say, if I'm being completely transparent, the state of Georgia and the city of Atlanta, I'm sure very much means well, but I don't have as much meaningful interaction, dialogue, or pressure upon me to address this. And so when I see what's going on here, and when I took this, I thought I knew a little something about it, started researching and seeing some of the people who were on the panel. Now I'm seeing people around and into this discussion, and I'm excited to go back and start, what would you call it, championing this more than I thought it was a little bit. We do the things on set you're supposed to do with trash and all that. But and I was speaking with Eric, who actually is working with Disney. I work for Disney, and I come to find out there's someone like him in Disney that services Marvel, and I'd like to talk to that person and say, hey, what are the things? And I'd like to see some positions like this putting more pressure on the producers who would put them into the budget, and then I can put them in my budget and make them work. Because right now I'm afraid what happens is the resistance isn't the crew and the people who don't want to do well. The resistance is, how much is that going to cost? What is that? This is different. You're not going to change my mind. I don't have time for that. So I think we're a little bit behind in Atlanta. So again, I'm excited about the opportunity to take a lot of this in, learn, and take it back, because Atlanta's a huge market. I don't know that it's quite as big as Vancouver, but I mean, it's like $4 billion last year in spend. So
it's a horse race, man.
Or you could just bring your production here.
Yeah.
Well, then.
Well, you know what? That's amazing. You came, you learned. You're going to take something back, and you have some action items. So I think we're done. No, just kidding.
It really is. As I hear everybody talking, I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah,
Can
great.
I just jump in here? Because
Yeah,
I
please
feel like
do.
it's a great opportunity just to give kudos to Julie Bernard, who was a driving force from the original conversation and now to Real Green. So thank you, Julie, for making us global leaders in this respect.
Yes, thank you. You had to do that, yeah. But that's where my inspiration came, was one of these things, one of the very, very first ones that were put on by the Film Commission at the time, and feeling that way, coming back inspired. Yeah, great. Mary Jo, did you have something to add? Yeah.
I would like to add one thing. One of the things that we've discovered as we drill down into these attempts to decarbonize our sets is, the most effective way is to do grid tie-ins. So that's tying into using the very clean power that we are blessed with here in British Columbia. And one thing that I would like to say to the location managers in the room is the best way to achieve that is to start early. Don't wait until the tech survey to start having those conversations with your rigging gaffers and with the other people on your team. Start that conversation as early as possible. And the other block to this is that there is a bit of siloing in the budgets that happens. So what people aren't taking into account that diesel generator is burning, $300 or $400 worth of diesel a day. And so, if there's a barrier in your budget to, paying for a power tie-in, you can sort of make the case that you're saving that money elsewhere.
So I'm going to dig into that a little bit because I think, Ryan, Mary Jo, you both touched on costs and budgets. And a lot of people in this room probably have that, how do you sell this? How do you create a business case to go to your production manager, producer to change something that might, on the surface, cost more? So let's talk a little bit about cost. And I'm going to go, actually, I'll go back to you, Ryan, and then we'll jump down to Australia as well to give you a heads up. Just thoughts on decarbonizing your efforts and some of the hard costs that you run up against in the budget. As does it cost more? First of all, like is it true, or is that a fallacy? And if it does, what are some of the tangible benefits, as you said, savings in other areas of the budget, and then what are the intangibles? So I've got some ideas what those are, but I want to hear from you what you think they might be. So,
I don't actually know one up against the other if it costs more or not. Again, I'm a little bit behind in exactly what we can actually do. So again, I'd be interested to hear some other folks' thoughts on this, but the truth of the matter is when I'm doing my budget, I do my budget the old way. And that's just, I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that, but we hire vendors that have, when we do trash, they recycle and things like that, but I don't have any line item in my budget that I consider the environmental cost for. I do my budget and I turn it in. But I would love to see what the options are, right? What the tangible things of, hey, if you go with this company, then they can charge this much more or less.
Right. Yeah. Eric, get ready. I'm going to come to you in a sec because we're heading your way. Down in Australia, what are you guys doing with cost or budget or anything related to sustainability?
I don't have a line item in my budget either for this kind of thing. I think Colin is probably, I don't want to throw you under the bus there, Colin, but I know that you are very conscious of the fuel, so I'll hand it to you. Yeah.
Well, thanks, Lisa. Look, obviously that travel point I raised before, that's always a big item in cost for producers. The more we travel, the more they spend, the more time that is lost. So that kind of takes care of itself. We certainly don't account for the cost of carbon in our approach. I know a lot of productions do that review at the end of the production, but it's not a day-to-day discussion we have, unfortunately. Right. So definitely looking forward to that, bringing part of that back from this discussion, and hopefully it infiltrates Australia.
Right. Okay. Cool. Eric, so tell us from the studio's point of view, how is this all balancing out on the balance sheet?
Yeah, that's a tough question. There are things, right? Certain things like renewable diesel that can be cost neutral. In LA, it is about the same price. In BC, it's not. So depends on where you are. It really, the sustainability initiatives might have very different costs. But like you mentioned, if you use an electric generator, right, and that costs more to rent, but then less fuel, you have to have someone really tracking that fuel. And so you equate that, right? A lot of times that doesn't happen. And so, you just see an increased cost in one category and you're not looking at the other budgets to see where you're saving that. And I think with kind of some of the new technologies, with these battery powered generators and other things, we're working with productions to try to better understand where are the savings going to be, and how do we measure those to try to pitch them, right? So we can do more of that stuff. And then in terms of the kind of externalities and in terms of costs, we do capture carbon emissions. We do carbon footprints with most of our productions, and so we're measuring, right, like the emissions from fuel, utilities, flights, hotels, things like that. And so we can kind of compare carbon emissions, but it's really hard to kind of compare certain, if you used a certain fuel or certain technology. I think we need to kind of refine how we're accounting for these certain things and the impact they're having on the overall emissions. And so that's something we're doing, but kind of in the earlier stage with some of these new things like the grid ties and the renewable diesels and the generators.
Right, okay. And I'm not going to let you off the hook just yet. So we had talked before about the Sustainable Production Alliance. I'm not sure if everyone in the room knows about it, but it is a really interesting group. And when you said we, I know you're talking about Disney, but I think there's a bigger we happening at the studios. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that and continuing on the idea of metrics and measuring what, I know there's some talk about different measuring tools. There's a peach and a pear, and I'm not even sure what they actually are.
All kinds of different fruits.
Yeah. Fruit-based carbon calculator type of things. Can you tell us a little bit about the Sustainable Production Alliance?
Yeah. So the Sustainable Production Alliance is awesome because it's like this, right? It's a group that allows us to get together with our peers and kind of discuss this type of stuff. So it's a group of the most major studios, and it's basically sustainability folks from all the major studios, and we get together. We have a bunch of different committees. One is on clean energy, and so we basically discuss how to move the industry forward in terms of sustainability. And so we've had, as a group, it's a lot easier to work with, governments, vendors, other folks. And so we've had some great discussions with Film LA and LEDWP, the utility, about grid ties. Obviously learning a lot is learned from Vancouver, which is awesome. We've had discussions with Film London, and they have a grid tie program too. And so we develop resources for productions too, around grid ties, renewable fuels. And so we kind of have a lot of tools we've developed, resource sheets on these things that kind of we work among. We're obviously very competitive when it comes to a lot of things, but when it comes to sustainability, we work together very closely. And we have kind of industry standard tools for capturing carbon footprints and more qualitative things that are happening kind of department by department. And we're working on updating a lot of those, especially the carbon footprints, to make them just easier to use, more understandable, and more applicable globally too, because they're really U.S. based, and we want to change that.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I mean that's fantastic. I think so. Every major studio has now a sustainability team, right? And so I think it's really great for location managers here to know that resource is available. If you're come away inspired like you are, Ryan, and you're in, you know who to call now. And if you're working for a different studio, I imagine it's pretty easy to find who you want to talk to and see what you can do in your area. I'll just one more little helpful tip, because you mentioned competitive nature of the companies in the industry, of course, but this is an area where competition is not beneficial, and I think everyone realizes that it's also not an area to be proprietary. Here at the City of Vancouver, we designed a film. We call it a kiosk. Some people call it a power drop or a tie-in. Big black metal box that when you open up looks like the back of a generator. It's actually now available on, I don't know if you know this or not, Eric, but we put it on our website. I basically went down to the factory the day it was finished, and I took all the manuals and the design specs and the schematics out of the front door, and I scanned the 50 pages, and we put it on the website the same day. So it's not an area to be proprietary, and everyone sharing that information really helps. So if you want to build something, as a matter of fact, you can just order it from our guys here, and they'll ship it down. So they did. That's what they did in Toronto, by the way. Yeah. Somehow they got it shipped and put in the ground a little faster than us, but we'll catch it. That's okay. It's friendly competition. How we doing? Gotcha. 15 remaining? 15, yeah. Okay, we definitely want to have some time for Q&A here, so I'm going to wrap it up. We have a fun little kind of fantasy exercise. You guys in Australia got your props? Okay, great. I'm going to ask everybody to, in here, if you look in between your chairs, you'll find a Sharpie and a pad of paper. Okay. Yeah. There's a, please. I could ask you all to bring your iPads and all that, but then, if you had a time machine and you were to go forward and visit a set in the future that was fully decarbonized, what year would you set the dial for? Write down the year on your paper. Don't show it to anybody yet. Just write down the year. You mean just the industry, or you mean just a film set? Yeah. 0. Fully decarbonized. 0. That a reasonable guess. You know, some amount of your own feelings on it and wishful thinking. Okay. Colin, Lisa, you guys are done, aren't you? Awesome, cool. Let's go back to you first. Colin, show us what you got. 2035. Awesome. Okay, you want to tell us why you picked that year?
Well, look, I'm trying to be positive, but I think we've got so many structural reforms to happen in Australia to make that happen. It's not going to happen before that. I'm still probably leaning to much later than that at this point.
All right. Well, you know what? I think you can do it. I think Australia can do it. What do you guys think? 2035? Okay. Lisa?
Interesting. Colin and I haven't spoken.
The
same number.
Any additional reasons why you picked that year?
Well, I'm also living in the land of hope. I think that, progressively the industry is turning their mind to being more aware of our impact. I think that if our government can get further on board with making electronic cars more available and, the electronic, the batteries, etc., and power hubs around the city, I think there's hope,
I like that number. So we got 2 2035s. Eric, show us what you got. 2038, very close. So why do you pick 2038? It's a very specific number. Something happening?
I don't know. I just it just felt right. No, I'm thinking about the grids, right? Like BC has a great, a large share of renewables, but that's not the case in a lot of places in the U.S. and the world. So even if we're able to tie into the grid in all of these places, that's still coming from natural gas, coal, other things. So I think that's going to change soon. But there's also a lot of policy, like, the low carbon fuel standard in BC and California helps a lot. New York's looking at one and other places, but it's just kind of the policy and a lot of that stuff takes time. So
yeah. Okay, great. Ryan?
All right.
Let's see.
I wrote it way too small. It says 2030.
2030. All right. Yes, I'm with you. 2030. Okay, that's so positive thinking. What? Tell me about it.
At the risk of saying the same thing, I'll reiterate what I said earlier. Is when I saw how fast, as a worldwide industry, we adapted to COVID and getting back out there. When I saw how fast you can truly do something when you're really motivated and your survival depends on it. I hope it doesn't come to that, but I hope people wake up and if they get half as motivated, that's only 8 years from now.
Yeah, great. I love that perspective. Mary Jo?
Also an optimist. I said 2030.
2030.
Touching on how we were able to pivot with COVID, I think that is a huge inspiration. And we're a creative industry. We're problem solvers. This is what we do. So if we set our minds to doing it, we can do it. And that's what matters. And we have a whole bunch of the tools that we already need. They already exist. We have battery generators. We have low carbon fuels. We have solutions to the problems. It's just a matter of implementing them and getting our act together, getting all the departments to work together, getting our governments to work with us and remove the barriers that currently exist. But I think it's a very doable thing.
Great. 2030, okay. Gemma?
I like to be somewhere around average, so 2032. You know, originally I wrote that number because I was thinking, okay, Canada can't sell combustion engines after 2035, so therefore by then we should have some 5 tons, 3 tons, and 1 tons that can actually, you know, this is how my brain works. But then I realized that you're right, we already have renewable diesel, so it could be decarbonized. You could use the trucks already with renewable diesel and you'd already get closer. So I want to change my answer, but it's in Sharpie.
Yeah. We'll just take the top sheet and recycle it after this, and we'll definitely be reusing the pads. So let's go to Q&A and give you guys some time, because I imagine we have a few. All right. First hand up, right there. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. You. Yeah. Who is that?
It's Ed Brand.
Oh, hey, Ed.
Hey, Geoff, first I want to compliment you on your socks. Those are great.
Thanks, Ed.
I don't even have a question, but I wanted to say that this was eye-opening. You really validated for me being here today. I didn't realize, and no offense to any of the other regions, but I didn't realize BC was so far ahead and that we were doing so many things in the right direction. So compliments to BC for that. And seeing the reaction of our friends in Australia and Atlanta and how they are interested and excited about what we're doing here and how things quickly change for us. And maybe we have some advantages because we have a cleaner grid that's provided by hydroelectric and we can do tie-ins. I'm impressed and I'm inspired by what I see here and what people are saying and moving us forward, and I see a lot of opportunity for change. So I just really wanted to validate what I saw, and thank you very much for allowing us to come here and learn this. I'm an independent filmmaker along with my wife, so for us it gives us inspiration to, when we're making films, to budget and think about those kind of things.
That's awesome.
Helping make change. So
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. The esteemed gentleman in the blue shirt.
I hate to be the old guy pissing on the campfire, but in 31 years, I've seen initiatives for the last 15 years or so. I see absolutely no progress in recycling sets. I've worked on huge productions, building huge sets, and other than the Matrix, which recycled everything, but it cost them a hell of a lot of money, and that was 15 or 20 years ago, I see no impetus, no initiative, no real desire to build sets in such a way that they can be disassembled and reused, especially on a studio lot. There's, I'm sorry, no excuse for these sets to be going into the hopper. What's it going to take to make some progress on that front?
Eric.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's something that we've been working on for a while with not a ton of progress. But I think, so one thing is that we're starting to measure our carbon emissions not only from burning fuels and purchasing electricity, but from everything we buy, everything we consume to make a production, in which obviously...
Carbon.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. So you got to look at like everything that goes into the harvesting raw materials for this lumber, processing, transportation, all that. We're going to be accounting for the carbon for that. And so that's one step to know exactly, like, it's not only waste to landfill, it's all the emissions that went into those materials. But then it's really just working with, it's studios working together, right? Because you might have this set, you either don't have a space to store it or no one else in your company wants it, but another studio probably does, or they might. So it's communication between studios, which we've been doing a better job of, and just this infrastructure, right? Having facilities in key places to store sets and having inventories where more people can pull from, but it's really tough.
If not reused, then repurposed. On Killers, I hate to keep referencing Killers, but we built these huge facades. We built 4 blocks worth of facades. They all came down, and I sort of worked a deal with the construction coordinator. Take a lot of this stuff down and leave it in a pile. And they did. And the next day, it was all gone. Because I talked to some folks, and they came in with their flatbeds, and they picked it up. Now, the producer was pissed off when he found out about it because of liability.
That's right.
I'm sure if Apple Safety knew that I'd done that, well, my career was over anyway, so it wouldn't have hurt me there. But
Liberating thing, isn't it?
no, my producer a dozen times said, I hate you old guys who are on your last movie. You don't give a crap about anything. But you know, there's got to be a way to find people, if not within the industry, outside of the industry, to reuse these things. And to do
I
the
think
same
I got
thing.
I got a few more people who want to respond to the question. And Mary Jo and then Gemma.
Sure. So here in BC, we're also ahead of the curve on this one. We have a fantastic company called Keep It Green Recycling, and they do a magnificent job in so many ways of making things easy for us. So they're the ones that have, provide us with all of the insanely amazing recycling facilities that we have in our production offices and on our sets. But they also have a sustainable lockup where we are able to donate anything that's left over at the end of a production, be it flattage, be it, folding tables, whatever you've got left over. And the wonderful Kelsey will either redistribute that to other productions, lower budget productions come and borrow from it, and it also just gets donated to charity and to wherever it needs to go. It's a great model that I'd love to see
Where's Kelsey?
spread throughout the world.
She's unfortunately with her family today, enjoying being an awesome mom.
Anyway.
She sends her regards.
Kudos to Kelsey, and she was a production assistant, I believe, who just saw the opportunity, saw what a mess we were making, and took it upon herself to start a company, and she's changed our industry.
Let her know there's some franchise opportunities. Other cities, yeah. Okay.
But the studios have to accept the fact that there's a cost to that, and they've got to start accounting for it at the studio level
Yep.
when they do their first insane budgets that are always incorrect. And then it's got to come down the pike to the
Yeah.
producer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Gemma.
Oh, I was just going to point out, Smiley, I think, Smiley, you may have wanted to say what Mary Jo was saying.
Kind of, and I wanted to add on to that about, because it's so great we have Kelsey service here, but obviously she has a capacity that gets reached very quickly, and because this is becoming more and more important, I wanted to ask, how soon do you think we could get more systems in place regionally where the studios are communicating? Because yes, that's a problem, and so that there's more options like storage solutions and adopting that circular sort of method. But I don't know if that's like the other studios are all talking, but what about in BC and in other regions? Like how can we make that happen quicker rather than later?
I mean, I will say a lot of the studios that we're discussing this are based in LA, but we're talking about it in, LA, Vancouver, New York, Toronto, Atlanta. So I think you're absolutely right. It needs to be incorporated into the budgets, and that those are discussions we're having because we realize, how much waste. And yeah, we donate tons of stuff, but it's not the majority, right? So the conversations are being had, and we're trying to push it as much as we can. But yeah.
One more answer to the question, and then I think I have another question coming. But Ryan. Good.
Actually, Mike and him both kind of said the same thing I was going to say, but I wanted to reiterate for anybody. I know, Mike, you speak loud and clear. But anybody couldn't hear, he was talking about. I want to say it kind of the same thing he said, but again, and there is a disconnect between the guy tearing down the set and the studio who just wants it done quickly, and people who are trying to implement all these things. And the location manager is a little bit in the middle of it, and I'd be happy to connect. We talked earlier about come on a ride along and watch what it really looks like. But until a studio, like to reiterate for those who didn't hear, actually hears that they have to do it, and then they dictate to the producers that they have to put it in the budget and dictate to us that this is how we're doing it. And then there's companies that can come along and do it, right?
Right,
So there's
yeah.
still a little bit of...
Yes,
and risk management.
Yeah, cool.
Risk management.
And our MC, I don't think you're probably telling me I'm getting close to out of time, but also has a question.
Well, yeah,
I do. And first of all, I think like these conversations are so important, and I think the efforts that are going in to try to be more responsible with how we are on this planet is so important. But I'm going to throw out a challenge to the narrative. And this comes from, I spent a lot of years, I was a documentary filmmaker, and I spent 5 years developing a show that was called Unintended Consequences. It was about the story of energy. And one of the people that I interviewed was, you probably all saw it because it was so successful, and just flying back here because it didn't happen. One of the people that I was fortunate enough to interview in New York many years ago was a renowned environmental architect, William McDougall, who wrote a book called Cradle to Cradle, and was all about how to be more responsible with what we do. Not cradle to grave, but cradle to cradle. And he said something that I've never ever forgotten, which is that carbon is the most essential process fuel we have on the planet. We cannot do anything without carbon. We are carbon-based life forms. We've made carbon the enemy, and I think that's a problem in terms of the narrative as we try as storytellers to solve this very complex problem. And so I just throw that out as a challenge in terms of how we continue to tell this story, because it is a fundamental problem in what we face as we move forward. How do we decarbonize when we are completely dependent on carbon? So it's something
That's way over my head.
Yeah, deep. That's so deep. You gonna make me end on that?
Well, I've gone through this for many years, and I hear the conversations, and I applaud it all, and I try to be, I consider myself an environmentalist. But I think that as a society, we don't understand the complexity of the systems that we live within. And it is a system, it's a system, and so systems thinking is really important within our own industry in terms of we are within an ecosystem. We are dependent on so many different factors, whether it's getting trucks to set, the materials we need to build our sets, the cameras that are made from carbon-based materials, solar panels that are made from carbon-based materials, all of it is interdependent. And so I think it's just in terms of broadening our perspective to be able to come up with like some really great solutions that are coming up here, like amazing stuff that's happening.
Yeah, so it's all right, we go. Hi, Hans.
So I just wanted to just ride off that and just add to everybody, there's lots of people in the room that are very comfortable talking about this stuff because we're in BC and like we've said so much that we're ahead of it. But for those people that aren't and feel like they're feeling that crunch, especially location managers and people in production that can't speak the lingo, and we are talking about decarbonizing, maybe we shift the currency back to the language that our producers and our leaders and our studio execs speak in, which is money. And the argument that I would make, and I would take to them all the time, is that if you're throwing it in the garbage, or it's coming out as smoke, it's money that you're throwing away. There is savings at the end of the day in every instance when we're throwing something out, whether it's the flattage that we're crushing, we're throwing that money away. And if there's ways that we can offset that, and sometimes that happens in prep. On shows that I've done, I've always asked my construction departments to build in units rather than building in straight flattage. Don't use glue, use nails. We'll pay a little premium now, but we'll be able to sell those flats somewhere along the way, down the way, and we've been able to successfully do that. That's something that you're taking money and using the currency of it, and speaking of budget line items and things like that, it transfers right away, and the producers can see the value. I think Mary Jo made a great point about fuel just being thrown away. If you pay a little premium and you get a little kickback from our municipality, you're breaking even on it. So you're making those cases all the time, and you just have to shift your turn your glasses, like you do at the optometrist, to a different lens, and put that set of glasses on to things, and you'll see that the money is there. It's there. I promise you.
Thank you, Hans. Hey, by the way, my year, 2025. I think the first, and it won't be everybody, but the first fully decarbonized set within 3 years.
I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I misunderstood the question. The first fully just
You
one
want to get to
anywhere?
one? You just get to find one.
Oh, well, okay. I would have answered differently.
The whole industry will come next. I think they'll fall in line. Thank you, everybody on the panel. Thank you, Lisa, Colin, for getting up early and joining us. Maybe we need to do one of these in Australia one day. What do you guys think? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.